Good afternoon. My name is Noah Galino, and my topic that I'll be focusing on today is FIFA and racism. So just a little bit of overview on FIFA. So FIFA's statement is FIFA is the federation that exists to govern football and to develop the game around the world. Like it states, it is the federation that governs all of the football clubs and national teams in the AFC, which is the Asia and Australia division, which has 47 teams. And the CAF is in Africa, and they have 56 participating nations. The CONCACAF is for North and Central America, which has 41 representatives. The CONMEBOL is for South America. There are 10 countries involved in that division. Then Oceania, the OFC, which has 13 teams. And then UEFA is the European League, which has 55 representing countries. As for national teams, FIFA oversees 210 men associations and 129 women's associations. So the problem with FIFA and racism in FIFA is the growing number of incidents in countries such as Italy. I'll be focusing on Italy for this specific project. But essentially, racial abuse has been an issue within international football since the formation of FIFA. Black players in leagues across Europe have been target of racism and humiliation. And FIFA has made an attempt to combat racism within the game of football, but they have not been firm with their punishments towards players, fans, or officials. So I just want to make it very clear. I'm focusing on racial abuse from fans to players in Italy, but there are also several other instances of referees being harassed, racially abused by players, and obviously fans racially abusing players and officials. So to combat this problem, I just want to take a little bit more of a look into racism in Italian football overall. So there's been a couple instances that have occurred within the last couple of years where black players have been, publicly humiliated and racially abused while playing on the soccer pitch. That includes throwing bananas onto the field or taunting players with monkey noises when they're, lining up for a free kick. There's been several players that have outspoken about this issue, and the Italian Federation, will generally fine a player or a team for when something like this occurs. But I am making this presentation to explain why FIFA needs to go a little bit more beyond to combat this issue. So in 2011 and 2016, the ORAC, which is also known as the Observatory on Racism in Football, did a study where in those 5 years they found 249 separate incidents within the Italian leagues, and this is for racial abuse. And then in 2017 and 18 alone, there was 60 incidents. So, I mean, as you can tell, this is an issue that has not gone away, and it's something that Italian soccer has not done enough to, kind of erase from their fandom and the way they view the game of soccer. For an example, Omar Daffy was an Italian Senegalese fifth division goalkeeper. So keep in mind, fifth division, this isn't even the top division in Italy. There's not as big of a following, but this was still able to make big enough news. But him and his teammates together walked off the pitch in the middle of a game after taunting and racial abuse from fans towards him. He just had gotten enough of it and decided to walk off as sort of a protest to, black players not tolerating any kind of harassment or abuse from fans. And then the Vision 2023 is an initiative that was put together to kind of combat racism within Italian football. So this includes two key pillars, which is the fight against racism and all other forms of discrimination, and protecting human rights. So these pillars include a commitment to taking necessary steps to implement anti-discrimination policies, um, and then an additional view that FIFA is going forward with is to plan for strengthening their um, diversity and anti-discrimination focus. And this includes discrimination on gender and sexual orientation as well. So the FIFA Good Practice Guide on diversity and anti-discrimination. This lays out a five-pillar strategy for combating racism and how they can use racism to make an example going forward. This includes education, regulations, controls and sanctions, networking and engagement, and then communications. So while FIFA has implemented several anti-discrimination policies following, unfortunate events of racial abuse, I personally believe that the repercussions are not enough. I think FIFA needs to kind of put their foot down more, and this is not it should not be a fine anymore. It should be, in my opinion, a ban on either players, officials, um, or fans for that matter. So I think, like I said, FIFA really needs to do a better job of making an example of this and really kind of hitting it on the head ahead of time. So to eliminate racial abuse or eliminate harassment coming from the stands, offering a ban would kind of hold fans more accountable. So solution one, I am, like I said, I'm focusing on bans in this situation. I think that FIFA has exercised and exhausted themselves with the fines. They have done, several other initiatives to try to fix this issue, but obviously it shows that it's not working. As racism in Italian football is very prominent, and unfortunately, racism just comes from the environment that a lot of these people grew up in. So it's I'm not condemning it, but it's very tough for someone that grew up a certain way to think differently. That's why the education part is great, but at the same time you need to educate and you also need to show why certain actions are wrong. So for solution number one, there's a ban of fans and fan bases. So my idea with this is that um, it is FIFA's job to protect all stakeholders. So that's the plans, the players, the fans, the athletes, the sponsors, etc. And imposing an automatic ban on fans and fan bases would support from supporting their country or teams in person, could prove to set an example, like I stated before, for how FIFA is going to combat racism going forward. So this is no longer a fine. This is no longer a slap on the wrist. This is just a full-on suspension from the stadium. And these bans could be for singular fans or entire fan bases, depending on the behavior in question. So obviously, if they notice one person is doing something, that person will be asked to leave and will be banned from the home games of the team that they are there to see. And then if entire fan bases are engaging in racial abuse or harassment, such as the Italian fans throwing bananas at the field and making monkey noises, there can be an ejection of an entire fan base. This kind of, I think that this takes away from the game of football. I think that it's important for these players to feel comfortable, and they shouldn't be in a position where they ever feel unsafe because of, the color of their skin or their cultural background or anything like that. So I think, using FIFA says that they have a zero tolerance policy. We've yet to see it. And I think, starting off with a ban of fans and fan bases is a really good way to put their foot down and, just kind of say, hey, this is, if any kind of behavior is shown like this, you're gone. And I think that that's really important for holding fans accountable. So, as I said, it enforces the zero tolerance policy, creating a new racism task force. So there was actually a task force that was created in 2014 by FIFA, as there were a handful of racial abuse allegations that had come in from various countries around Europe. And actually in 2016, they disbanded the task force as FIFA released a statement saying that they had done their job. Clearly, that's not the case, as racism is very much prominent today in European football and all over the world for that matter. So I think creating a new racism task force would be a great way to kind of combat racism and really make sure that FIFA is taking the necessary precautions to combat racism. So I think a way that they could do this is even taking members of this racism task force and putting them in the stands at games so that they're able to get an up close view of fan bases and how they interact with their team and the opposing team, and would be there to kind of lay down the law if there were to be any instances of racial abuse. I think also empowering the officials to end matches prematurely is also super important in this aspect. I think if a referee hears any kind of any behavior that is deemed racially abuse or not appropriate, the official will blow the match dead and say, listen, we're not tolerating that. We're here to play soccer. We're not here to, abuse other people, verbally abuse other people. It's just important for them um, to take that and kind of vouch for the player that is receiving this abuse. So solution two, again, a ban. So this would be a team ban. A team ban would be issued for countries where racial abuse continues to affect the environment of a soccer match. So, like I was saying, Italy, Italian football has a lot of or a long history of racial abuse towards players on opposing teams. So the ban would be from world tournaments such as the FIFA World Cup. And then the goal of imposing this ban would just be to punish countries that routinely participate in racial abuse of opposing players. So the hope of this would be that players from these countries would hold their fans accountable, and would hold themselves accountable for the way that they conduct themselves. I think that it's important to know too that with a team ban that the um, depending on the behavior of the fans, that the fans of a specific team could play a role into a team ban. I think that, I think if you can kind of lean it on that players will actually hold their fans accountable, will talk to them and say, hey, you can't do this. And obviously, no team wants to get banned from the World Cup. So really kind of watching how they portray themselves, how they handle themselves is super important. And I think, that's a great enough penalty to really push people away from going down the avenue of racially abusing players from opposing teams. Um, so um, for the solution, we would be highlighting countries with previous incidents. So obviously, countries like Hungary and Italy who have past of racial abuse within their soccer programs. I think that those are going to be the teams at the top of the list. So they're going to have the eye on them, and they're going to see how they treat other players. If Italy was to go off and play in the World Cup, how are Italian fans going to handle playing against of players of different nationalities and backgrounds? That's something that FIFA really wants to make sure that they kind of handle before any other allegations of abuse come out. And then emptying stadiums would be a potential other solution. So obviously playing in front of your home fans is something that all players love to do. It adds excitement, it adds adrenaline to a team. However, if these if players on these teams, are racially abusing referees or other players on the other team, or the fans are doing the same, they would be asked to leave the stadium. The team would have to play in a quiet stadium. There's no adrenaline. There's no home field advantage. It would just be you can't play with fans. That ban would last for an entire season or whatever the FIFA seems fit. But having no fans at a stadium, I also believe is a fair punishment and would cause teams to again watch how they're reacting, watch how they're acting with opposing players and officials. And then solution three. So this would be a player ban without pay. So again, all of these solutions are coming from holding players accountable. We want to make sure that we're not just making FIFA fine a certain fan base or a certain team or or put them on a watch list. Like obviously racism has been tried to be combated in FIFA and around the world, but you have to put your foot down to just get the message across that hey, this is a zero tolerance policy. We're not going to accept this. So I think banning a player without pay at all is going to instill a form of awareness within the player. Obviously, a player wants to get paid; they want to be able to support their family. However, a player that is deemed of engaging in racial abuse with another player, another fan, another or an official. These players could be banned without pay at all, and this is for specific incidents involving one single player. Um, Obviously, that's going to kind of come into play, and when money's at stake, I believe that I think that they'd be more hesitant to cross the line. And the way that we can kind of figure out what players are saying and what players could be potential issues, we would have mic'd up refs. So all referees would have a microphone that would um, catch any interactions between players and officials, and anything that may be said that is insensitive would be recorded and be able to be reviewed by FIFA, and would determine the punishment. And then the one strike rule um, is just to enforce FIFA's zero tolerance policy. So players will get a warning for their racist actions. Instead, a player that engages in racial abuse will be suspended immediately once thorough analysis of the recordings have been done. So again, this is a ban to we don't want to keep kind of dancing around the issue of racism in soccer. We don't want to say, oh, you're making the environment tough for players from different cultural backgrounds. We're going to just fine you. No, we're going to go a step further, and we're going to ensure that these actions don't go unnoticed, and that punishment is served correctly for creating an unsafe environment for players in different leagues around the world. So the FIFA racism ban strategic communication plan. So our purpose for this is just creating an inclusive environment for all players, fans, and officials. At the end of the day, this is a sport that many kids look up to. You want to create an environment where all kids feel comfortable playing. A big issue with the racism in Italian football is that it is drawing a lot of members of minority demographics away from the game of soccer, because there is an environment of unsafety and they're not being accepted. And so I think just creating an inclusive environment and really tackling racism as it happens and all that will create an environment where you're kind of removing the bad apples, and allowing the game of soccer to take over. And then holding others accountable. The purpose of this is for teams don't want to get a ban, players don't want to get a ban, fans don't want to get banned. So holding each other accountable, making sure that you're acting correctly and knowing that you're not going to get away with any kind of racial abuse or harassment is super important. And I believe that by using these bans, that it will hold others accountable, and it will make the environment a bit more accepting in Italian football. So obviously the objectives are implementing these bans and then recreating the anti-racism task force. So you obviously want to have people from FIFA representing um, at these games in countries where this is a majority of an issue. So in Italy, we're going to want to have more representatives from FIFA in the stands to kind of get a better idea of truly what's going on and how they can make the necessary measures to make games safer and eliminate any kind of abuse from stadiums. So just my communication plan. So just like I said, creating a more inclusive environment in soccer. So this would be offering education and statistics involving racism in professional soccer. So making people aware of this issue and why it's detrimental to the game of soccer. And the actions for that would be using previous instances of abuse to make an example and create expectations for how fans, players, and officials should act. This would be done through the FIFA board at all times. This is now the time to really put the foot down on combating racism and kind of saying, this is it. And then measuring success would be, accepting players from minority backgrounds or just the elimination of any racial comments or harassment from the stand or in the game. And then our other goal is eliminating racism in soccer matches around the world. So our objective is to identify racial abuse and address it, much like we are here, make soccer venues a safer and more inclusive place, and then allow targeted players to feel comfortable in whichever country that they play for. So the actions, like I said, would be using referee microphones to collect interactions, implementing bans for all offenders, on a one strike rule, and then having members of FIFA sit amongst the fans. The responsible parties would be the newly formed or reformed anti-racism task force, the team owners, and the head of the country's national teams. So the head of the country's national teams are responsible for relaying the messages from FIFA and implementing them in their country to abide by all policies and social justices. So again, the time period would be always, and then the measuring success would be a comfortable playing environment for all, and surveying players that have been targets of social abuse and racial abuse and seeing if they have noticed a difference in fact. And then our products, the products are just designed to create a more inclusive environment, as I stated before, hold fans, players, and officials accountable, and then promote FIFA's zero tolerance policy on racism. So, like I had said before, mic'd up refs. This would be something that would be used to catch all interactions between players, maybe fans, and it would be able to uncover any kind of harassment or abuse that could be put into question. The FIFA Congress meetings, so this would be used to, this new initiative would be used to and relayed at FIFA Congress meetings so that all participating countries in the FIFA Federation are aware of these bans, are aware of this zero tolerance policy, and the country itself is able to put their own spin potentially on the punishments and the bans. Pre-game announcements before every match. Obviously, there's mentions of racist remarks or gestures won't be tolerated at the stadiums, but needs to go a step further and say, we are any site of any kind of racial abuse or harassment, and you're gone. This is a one strike policy, and that's it. And a potential, season ban, lifetime ban could be possible depending on the behavior. And then just utilizing more FIFA representatives, so getting more people on the ground to combat this issue, and really finding a way to kind of get players to understand, that racism is something that is an issue, and that it's an issue between players and fans and officials, and it's not just one demographic. This is far bigger, and by having more representatives, you're able to explore that more thoroughly. So here are my references. That's about all I have um, for racism in Italian football. If you have any questions, feel free to message me and we can talk about it. But other than that, I appreciate the time. Thank you.